Welcome back to another episode of the Shadowban Syndicate. I'm one of your hosts, Juan Areolas. How you doing today? Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome.
Nips.
I'm Joel Nipples.
We had an incident to where somebody was trying to give a shout out and then he just butchered it, right? I mean,
That's
it's
what
okay
I do,
though.
man.
It's the thought that counts though, right?
And I can't get names right, man. That's what it is. If they're gonna have to get used to that, man. I'm gonna be saying you're gonna have to look at the bottom of the title of the episode so you can know what I'm talking about, because I'm probably gonna say it wrong every time.
Funkadelic, Folconelli. Welcome back. What's up, guys? How y'all been since we last spoke?
Always doing good.
Good, brother, man. We're having a blast. We're just doing a lot of research, dropping shows, getting ready to drop the website in a couple weeks. So, everything's really coming together. Got a lot of new music we're working on too. Skinwalker film's getting close to coming out, so that's going to be dope. We got a full album coming out with that too. So ready to go, man. I know Sean's got a lot of music in the tank too. So we've been super busy. And there's going to be a super private secret thing that I'm going to be hunting that I'll have to tell you off air what's going to go down with that. Yeah. Some good cryptic shit.
Nice. Well, yeah, we have a real life Indiana Jones with us today here. So Joel was hunting Bigfoot in somewhere in the West Coast, and then he's going on another trip. So that's pretty awesome, bro. Living it up. And you can find me, tjojp.com. Where can people find you guys? Plug your stuff for my people over on my end.
Kill the Mockingbirds Podcast on Instagram. Kill the Mockingbirds on Telegram. Coming soon. Killthemockingbirds.com. Sean Chris, Joel Thomas on all streaming platforms for music.
Nice.
That way, you could go,
wow, I just saved myself $150. Shoo!
You know what I mean? Make it easy for yourself. Save that money.
Yeah, that's right. Joel, you want to plug anything?
No, I'm good. He already plugged it for me. Generally, that happens, so I'm pretty relaxed.
Nice. It's like your little homunculus, bro.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger than a homunculus. So, it looks like I ate a couple
It's a homunculus, bro. It's a homunculus.
Homunculus.
All right. Enough of that. So today, on the last episode we did the Funkadelic Folconelli.
Shadowban Syndicate.
We need to I'll get that done for us, and I'll hit that button, and then we'll recap the last episode. On the last episode of the Shadowban Syndicate, the guys talked about Folconelli. So we talked about the Shadowban Syndicate, Funkadelic Folconelli, and the enigma that was, right? I mean, we kind of went back and forth. Was he a real guy? Maybe not. Maybe he was an entity of some sort that was taking over people. Right, so check that out. And then the first one before that, we did Ascension Technology. So that's also. And on the third one today, we're going to be talking about one of the subjects that I first got into when I started doing podcasting, because it is one of these other enigmatic subjects that is up for debate, hot debate, and people go crazy with it. And it's going to be the Nephilim. So we're going to start. I wanted to start out with first, like the vanilla, basic we keep idea, Wikipedia page type of stuff, because that's where people who, how Sean was saying before we started recording, when you Google alchemy or when you Google Folconelli or when you Google any of these subjects, you're going to get some stuff that's kind of, it's pretty basic. It's going to kind of sort of tell you just the tip, but it's not really going to get into the deep stuff. And I always tell people, you got to go digging for the deep stuff. You got to go for the cool stuff. You got to go digging. So Joel has a presentation for us today because he is a Nephilim expert, a Nephilimologist. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love Nephilim. I'll be honest with you, I've really just been into giants since I was a kid, and I always just like the idea of giants. And I think when I started getting in the conspiracy world, it really resonated with me, and me coming from a biblical background and just loving how that's a huge part of it, even though most of the people that are in the Bible don't even know that it's there. And it's all through it too. It's, people point to a couple verses, which we'll be reading some verses today, but they point to a couple verses where the word Nephilim's used. And we'll even talk about where that word originated we'll talk about how the Raphaim originated as well. So we'll get into a little bit of that. But I do want to kind of break down for some people that might not know what the Nephilim are, their physical traits, and where they came from. We'll kind of get into that to start with, and then we'll kind of break into how it's become popular in mainstream and even pop culture, and then we'll go deep diving the rest of the episode. But the Nephilim were said to have 6 fingers and 6 toes. That was one of their big traits that's talked about all through the Bible. When I went to go look at the petroglyphs out in Utah, the Native Americans had drawn them on the side, or maybe even giants had drawn them on the side of these canyon walls with 6 fingers, which was really crazy. They're also said to have double rows of teeth. So they've got, a set of teeth in the front, and then they've got a whole nother row behind it. So you got to understand their jaws were huge.
It's like Attack on Titan. Is that like something like that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. If you're thinking about Attack on Titan, which is probably one of my favorite animes that's out there, yeah, very similar to that. And I think the Titans were constructed on that show from Nephilim lore, to be honest with you. Even though I think that how they're created is obviously vastly different.
To tell people too, like Nephilim is different from fallen angels. I think people get like confused. Like I didn't know that much about Nephilim until I met you, Joel. You gave me crash course, but I think a lot of people fall into like, hey, fallen angels, Nephilim, same thing, and Nephilim are more of the hybrid of the fallen angels and man. Correct.
So, and we're gonna get into that here with a couple of the Bible verses, so people understand where the word Nephilim comes from. So it starts in Genesis 6. It says, when man began to multiply on the face of the land, the daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any that they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later too, how there was a cap life on the Nephilim, because that's why he did that. And then it says in verse 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. So these were the giants. The sons of God, when it's broke down in the Hebrew, it's actually talking about angelic beings, right? So these aren't men. That's not what these are. These were the fallen angels, the fallen ones, the 1/3 of the angels that left with Lucifer, or Abaddon, or whatever name you want to use biblically for Satan when they left. So there was a contingent. I know the book of Enoch talks about like 300. There's a contingent of them. And it's said to happen on Mount Hermon, by the way, too, where they took these daughters of men, they had sex with them, and from these women were born giants. Now, these first set were supposed to be absolutely ridiculous, right? These are the ones that you hear about that were in the 30 to 40 foot range. These are the original ones. So they were considered gods as well. So, when they walk the earth and you're looking at something that's 30 feet tall, or, even if it was 15, 20 feet tall, it's ridiculous, right? And they're super quick, super fast. They had a lot of traits like their fathers. Some were said to even be able to shapeshift, which is really crazy too. So that's even in a whole different spectrum of what they could be able to do. But back to their physiology, their ratio was also a 2-to-1 build. So if you know anything about human beings, we're at a 3-to-1 build, which means that our height to width ratio is 3-to-1, which means we're taller. And again, this is not everybody, but this is like bone density and all that too. Whereas Nephilim were 2-to-1. So for people that don't understand it, say a giant was 20 feet tall. That would mean that 2-to-1 ratio would make him 20 feet tall and 10 feet wide. So they were super dense too. So they weren't just tall and lanky, and you were just talking about the Titans from Attack on Titan, like lambering around and falling all over the place. No, these guys were super big and thick, baby. They were thick.
Yeah, they had them cheeks.
They had
But when
them
I was
cheeks,
looking
baby.
through a lot of stuff, they were also saying that there was a lot of Nephilim that were not giants, that were between the 5'9" and 6-foot range. That there was also other like hybrids, because that they were calling a lot of it like being hybrids. That they were not all giants. That there was actually like normal like human sized different Nephilim. So it's not just the giants, from what I was reading and stuff.
You're not
So the
wrong.
way I understood it, and this is how I was introduced to it, was, and real quick, the WeKeep idea definition of the Nephilim, right? To base all this off of that Joel's already covered, are mysterious beings or people in the Hebrew Bible who are described as being large and strong. The word Nephilim is loosely translated as giants in most translations of the Hebrew Bible, but left untranslated in others. So the way I was introduced to this topic was that there was the Elohim, which were the hybrids. So like think of like Hercules, half man, so demigods, right? Then there was the Nephilim, which were the giants, and then you had the Watchers, which were these angels that were watching over humanity. And then they were like, damn, they look good, right? Cheeks, they went down there, inserted themselves, and then that's the way I understood it from the beginning. But then we have like these different attributes, how you're saying, these different hierarchies. And Mount Hermon, real quick, is on the 33rd parallel. It's also one of the places that's seen as this place of, it's tied into various religions. Like, oh, this is where they came down, or this is where they ascended from, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up the Elohim. So Elohim in Hebrew can mean a lot of different things. There's even a verse in Psalms 82:1 where it says Elohim, which in the singular form actually means Yahweh or God. So it was actually used in that form too. So it says Elohim judge the Elohim, which if in the plural, it said God judge the gods. Now you can take that a couple different ways. You could talk about the divine council, that there were literally other gods that are beneath Yahweh, beneath the one God. Or you could say that the divine council was actually the angelic council, and you could get into angelology where you start talking about the different hierarchies of seraphim, the cherubim, the thrones, dominions, and you can go all the way down to guardian angels. But at the end of the day, the Elohim, in the term that you're talking about, I would say that in that particular way that the Elohim would be the same thing as Nephilim. I think they were just another word for them, especially if you're talking about from Mesopotamia, because they talk about the Elu, and it's translated as shining ones, which you're going to see that word come up a lot with a lot of different cultures when they translate the word into shining ones. But it's also said that the Elu is the basis of Elohim, which also translated to the sons of God. So again, we're back to kind of like the fallen angels or whatever when it comes to this Elohim word, but that's just in the Hebrew. Again, depending on who's using it, it could be used differently. I think, to me, like the first level of these giants that came were the Nephilim. That's what I consider the Nephilim. Now, I know some people like to use word Raphaim, and we're going to get into what that means after a little bit too. But I tend to use that for the giants that came after the flood, after the deluge, because I think they were just a little more diluted. They weren't these massive giants that you saw from before the flood. So yeah, as far as the Elohim goes, that's just my take on it.
No, right on, and that's where I'm gonna leave because I got a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want to derail this too much, and I think we could save it for the end, as far as like these other outlandish ideas involving. Because I have some questions, but I don't want to again derail the conversation. So yeah, and that's the way I learned about it, through Dr. Lumpkin's work, which I've told you guys about before, because he's written various books on the subject, and that was one of the ways I interpreted that work. And then you start getting into the non-canonical texts that start referencing these other races, right? You have the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Nag Hammadi Library, where they start to talk about, right, the Book of Giants. And I've always said that these other extracurricular books have like the best names you could use for like a band or something. It's like the end of the world. I think it was like at the edge of the world or something. There's like so many cool names that these other texts have versus like the vanilla stuff that we have, like the the mainstream?
I love the Book of Giants. It's a great book. And matter of fact, there's a really cool thing, and when I get to that Book of Giants piece, there's a really cool part of the Book of Giants that actually sheds a different, I wouldn't say a different, but an expanded light on Yahweh too, and how he has a far-reaching love and forgiveness as well, even to giants. So it's pretty telling in that book, even how that rolls too. But yeah, as far as the giants go, even their brain size was 3 to 6 times that of a human. Some guys even question that they would even make modern day geniuses seem feeble. So when you think about it, our brains, we were using 100% of our brains back then. Whereas now we use what, 10%? I think that's just the normal, what people say we
Or
do.
they say, I kind of disagree with that. I've always
Yeah.
pushed back. I think that's just like a plural to push us to go into another path. But yeah.
I don't disagree, but I don't think we use very much of it, especially with like all the advances in technology that's like thrown at us to not use it as much too. So I think maybe that's just on our own volition that we're not using it too. So I do agree with you there too with that. But let's just giant wise, say your brain is 3 to 6 times that of ours, and we're using 100% of it. They're using 100% of that. Also, with their physical makeup being half, we're talking about the original's half fallen angel. I mean, they're also tapping into a whole different set of alchemy, and that's true. They were kind of the first alchemists. Now, I wouldn't say the first, because I consider Cain and his son Enoch being the first alchemist, because Enoch created hieroglyphs and was really into the occult and learned a lot from fallen angels. So I think they kind of were the first with the Brotherhood of the Snake. But I do think that giants were master alchemists. I mean, they even talk about the Raphaim. Their body makeup was built to move through portals. They knew how to use certain incantations and certain sigils to quickly open portals and move in and out throughout the world, which is pretty wild. So again, this is a lot of conjecture from people that have picked from a lot of different religions and different cultures from around the world, but it seems to kind of add up, especially when I tend to believe for sure that there's portals and different dimensions. And if we're talking about fallen angels or angels in general or anything spiritual, we're talking dimensionally being able to shift and move through stuff. Everybody's worried about up. It's not about up. It's about moving through different dimensions. And portaling is one of the easiest ways to do that.
I think it's a lateral movement, right? Instead of vertical. Because I've heard it put that way once you achieve... right, the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, everything is lateral from there.
Right.
So whatever that means, again, I'm not in any secret societies, but I know you were once part of that. I don't know if you know anything about lateral. So, I mean, if that would kind of hint that towards going, right, staying kind of here, but not really type of thing, right? Like phasing in and out.
Well, everything in Freemasonry is built on geometry. So it's all straight lines, right? So it's definitely anytime you talk about Jacob's ladder or, degrees, it's all about degrees. Everything's straight.
Oh,
so,
I got you. Yes.
So,
okay, that makes sense.
Definitely, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. When we're also talking about giants, the physical makeup, height, right? So in the book of Enoch, it said they were 300 cubits. Now, I really want to break that down for people because most people think that's a copying error, because 300 cubits would be 150 yards to 450 feet tall. So again, that's a little outlandish on the side of maybe height wise. Generally speaking, most people think they were in that 30 to 40 foot range. And the reason why they think that, and I'm going to have this right here, because in Amos 2:9, it says, "Yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oak." So when you're talking about like the cedars of Lebanon, those were around that 35 to 40 foot range on the medium height. I mean, they could get up to 100 feet in range. And then their trunk could get to 40 to 80 feet. So that would kind of play into that 2-to-1 range that we talked about before. So yeah, you're pulling them up now. That makes a little more sense to me on a range of it's at least the the first group. Now, Sean, I completely agree with you, different types of Nephilim, because we had Gary Wayne on our show, and he talked about the different ones, the different bloodlines, like the fairy bloodlines and the dragon bloodlines, and where at least some version of the reptilians came from. He says they're from fallen angels. I mean, we could talk about the mating with a lot of different things and creating, also DNA splicing a lot of different things too. So yeah, we talk about like fairies and gnomes and stuff, and a lot of people think those are products of fallen angels. So yeah, in that case, absolutely. Like I think you're not wrong there.
And some of the stuff could be just lure too, as well. Like when they're saying 40 feet, or like how you were saying that they described it to be the size of a tree, because that's what humans do in general, right? Like, you know, they call people skyscrapers. They'll be like, oh, he's as big as a skyscraper. Like that's like embellishing. Like we don't intend to do that, but using adjectives and stuff. That's why, like me personally, I mean, anything could be possible, but I just really think between that 10 and 15 foot range is really where it's at. And I do think a lot wider, like I was telling you before, like more like the mountain from Game of Thrones type of, like really big and really tall, because I think people embellish, like not intentionally, but we use adjectives and things to like kind of really write it out of to how they looked.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, but I'm going to tell you why. I do agree with you maybe after the flood, right? But I think before the flood, it was a different world, and I think that there have been skeletons found that were in crazy, and we're going to get to that when we start talking about skeletons found and different lore of people running into giants. I mean, there's even a story, and this was on Wes Germer's show, Sasquatch Chronicles, where a guy was hiking or hunting in Alaska, and he was out there with his dogs, and he heard something, and it was a red-headed giant, and he said this was in the 20-foot range, and this is out in the middle of nowhere. So again, I'm not saying that this is just running rampantly all over the place, but I mean, but
he's saying 20 feet, but he doesn't know that. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you go and get a bunch of people that are 6'10", 7 foot, and you tell people, and someone that never has seen other tall people and say they're an average 5'2" or a 5'5" or something like that, they're gonna describe these people way taller than they actually are, right? Because they don't know.
Walk by the trees, though, Sean.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, again,
if it's like, towering over the trees, though, that would be over 20 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that people exaggerate a lot. Like I've seen plenty of the brain games, and where, like, if you see the old Monster Quest, like they throw things in front of people, and people are like, "That thing was like 20 feet wide," and it was.
The balls
right?
on him, bro, were fucking huge.
So I'm just saying, I always hold it with a grain of salt. That again, I don't know that I'm right. I just from what I'm
huge.
Basing, what I'm basing it off of is what we see nowadays, right? There is people that were 8 feet, 9 feet tall, so 10 feet to 15 feet's not, you know, all that like wild. And plus, I also think that people try to have this lure of maybe that the Nephilim were superior to humans, and that's the writing that they want, like how you were talking about their brain being much bigger than humans, but like a whale's brain is much bigger than a human as well. It depends on what you mean by intellect, right? They have a different type of intellect. Maybe they could figure out certain things, or their intellect was more into the earth. You know what I'm saying? So their brain size doesn't necessarily make them more powerful than a human. Now, that brain size could give them why they move faster, why they, maybe jump higher and things of that nature, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they were more intelligent than us.
I think the problem with the Nephilim, and you're going to see this as we break this down today, though, is they're very arrogant and cocky, and that's why they end up failing a lot, though. I don't think they're necessarily smarter than humans. I just mean that the brains are bigger, and I just I do think that they had a certain level of intelligence that, or access to certain things that humans didn't necessarily have. But that was also a trick as well, because humans that had access to God understood that they had a power as well that was more powerful. You think about these giants, they got wiped out by the Israelites, and we're going to get into that too. I mean, we're talking about Og, how arrogant he was and how he got tricked. I mean, they still failed, right? They still failed over and over again. So in that aspect, I completely agree with you, Sean.
That's all I'm saying. Just because like a sperm whale's brain is 20 pounds, right? A human's brain is 3 pounds, and it kind of reminds me of, you guys seen the movie Sandlot, right? Remember how, like, when they're talking about the beast, the dog next door, they're like all these stories of the beast, man, he like killed people, going crazy. That's what I always say, because people embellish. Like, so I do always try to keep that little in the middle. And I do think, yeah, they're arrogant, and I think they think they're more intelligent than us, right? And I think they push that lure so that we can feel inferior, just like aliens and things of that nature, which I think aliens and angels, I really do believe that they go hand in hand. I think that's, a misconception where if you believe in aliens and angels, I think they're almost the same thing, right? Like, we don't really know, but on the same level. And I think that if we can like prove, they want us to feel like we're inferior so that we can't win, that we're always like feeling down and out, instead of like we could take these challenges on because we're like, man, they're giant, they're 40 feet tall, what are you going to do? They're just going to step on you. So I'm just, that's my pushback,
Yeah.
Drag those.
Drag them, baby. He's probably stepping on them. I think really what I'm trying to represent by them being intelligent, though, Sean, I don't want them to come off as these like lugging around,
like Attack on Titan.
They weren't like that. They were super smart. Like, and it wasn't to say that humankind at that time wasn't smart too, because dude, listen, we're talking about the progeny of Adam, like on the Seth side. So those people were super smart too, and super connected, and had an alchemical way in their own way too. So that's you got to put that into perspective as well, man. It was just a different way, because they spoke, God spoke through them. So it was a different battle, it was light versus dark in that element. But I just wanted to say, because when people think of giants, they get that stupid picture of those Disney movies of some lumbering giant around, and it's not really like that. They were completely different than that, man. They were very, very smart. They were great in battle. Their dexterity was nuts, over the charts. But yeah, they still got tricked and got hemmed up too. So, it wasn't that they did that. They just, kept winning, because clearly, they're not in our faces, at least on a level that's outside of, a hidden level. They're not in our faces like that now.
So real quick, not to jump around, but I agree with Sean, because we have these depictions, right, of let's go back as far back as we know, the Anunnaki. They are bigger in these depictions, in these hieroglyphs, or these pictures, whatever they call them in Sumerian. They're bigger. And we have also the phenomenon of the blue people in Egyptian hieroglyphs, and they're also very tall. And they also have, is it a hat, or is it their head is elongated? What's going on there? And to jump around here, right, the Bible, do I believe everything in it happened? No. There's also the argument that it's an alchemical text encoded in numbers, but that's a whole nother podcast. But let's say that everything did happen. They say that David, when he killed Goliath, was about the year 1010 BC. And he had 30 years, because he was 30 when he killed the giant. Well, because when I always think of Nephilim and giants in the Bible, I always think of David and Goliath. Goliath was Nephilim descent. I mean, and if you go even before that, they say that Ham's wife, the wife of Ham on Noah's Ark, was of Nephilim descent. Have you ever heard of that, Joel?
I have heard of that. I don't really buy into that though. And the reason why that I say that though is because when God came to Noah and said that he was perfect in his eyes, he wasn't talking about his holiness. He was talking about his DNA. That was the whole point. They wanted to get everyone on the boat whose DNA was pure, because from that bloodline, Jesus came from that bloodline, and he couldn't have that tainted fallen angel Nephilim blood. So I don't buy into the fact that anybody on that ark had Nephilim bloodline. Now, I do think that the Nephilim show back up after the flood for sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's time and time again. We'll get into that, because they show up a lot after the flood. Like you hear about them a lot, and that is more in the range of what Sean's talking about, where you're seeing a lot of these like 10 to like 15 foot tall giants. You're talking about Goliath. He was in that like 10 to 12 foot range. Those guys are
he was
the
a baby
Raphaim.
Nephilim.
Yeah, it really was. Even his brothers, we'll get into his brothers too today, but his brothers got tore up by David and the mighty men as well, because they went hunting him down. So, and even biblically, it talks about technology that they didn't understand when they ran up on him. So you had a lot of that going on too. And that's biblical. That's actually in the Hebrew text. So.
I know, but the biology of it, right? Like when we talk about birthing, we've talked about with Gary Wayne, like how the discussion of birthing these, it would be more realistic of what we're saying if it was women being into the ranges of 10 to 15, because like you grow up as a baby. And like I said, we've actually have evidence of that, like real recent. And I'm not saying like there's not other creatures. Now, these other giant bones that we find, we don't know what these are, right? We don't know that these are the same Nephilim. We're assuming because we're finding them, just like when we find any bones, what they're like, it could, we don't know what it looks like with the skin. Like we talk about dinosaurs, right? We're assuming that with skin on it, with its fur or whatever hat may have, that the skeleton could be of something else. I'm not saying it can. I just look at it as like through the birthing way. I'm not saying even 20 feet makes sense, but like it had to be something that can grow from like a human, that could come from a human body and then become this towering, which we have seen, but mainly it would be more of the 8, 9, 10 range.
Yeah, but you're also considering that they're actually coming out the vagina. So if we're going to play this into gray aliens taking women and they're removing babies before they even get into a higher gestation period, so they're taking them out before it even gets to that point. So if they are that big, they would have already done that, or they don't care about the women at all. Why would they care? You know what I mean?
And let's take it a step further though, Joe, because you mentioned something that I had never really heard before, that the Nephilim were masters of alchemy. Well, what part of the lore, if you follow, again, this is Freemasonic, but the Watchers are the ones watching the divine alchemist at work. And obviously, you know exactly what I'm thinking, right? They were growing these things outside of the... And that's also Anunnaki lore as well, that they take the seed of this homos, and they were genetic splicing, and they were doing genetic experiments, which would also tie it into alchemy. Part of alchemy is this genetic experimentation of trying to create life outside of the matrix, outside of the womb, because they wanted to feel that power of God as well, right? Because God creates life, so let's do it ourselves as well.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that was going on too outside of the womb. I think you had a lot of chimera back then too. I mean, you think about all of the ancient hieroglyphics that we've seen with weird like dogmen, especially in Egyptian culture, and you've got lion bodies with man faces and vice versa, and you've got all that going on. So yeah, I think there was a lot of DNA splicing, and as we go with this entire episode, we'll get into what I think could be happening now too. So yeah, I think it's highly possible that these giants were super tall, because if we're talking about fallen angels who have the technology and the wherewithal to know how to do it, they could make it happen, especially if we're talking about DNA splicing. Now, do I agree with you, Sean, on your range of as we go down through history? Yeah, but I'm talking about a little more back.
But then why would they get smaller though? That's like why I don't understand. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're growing them and you're putting, why would you be like, oh, now they can only be 10 to 15, but they used to be 40 feet. Now, like, we're ranging them, you know what I mean? And that's why I say a lot of the lure too, because if they're so intelligent and they're growing them, there has to be, and they're experimenting, has to be problems as well. They can't all come out to these perfection pieces of like, oh man, I'm perfect, because they're not God, right? Like, God maybe can do that, but they're not God, and they are trying to use a similar science
right there. Because if they're not God and they're not perfect, then as they continually muddy the bloodline, they're not going to be as tall. They're going to get smaller and smaller. That's how it's going to
be.
I know, but it would happen like the first time. Like when you cook a dish, right? When the first time you try to cook a dish, you don't usually perfect it. After 10, 15 times you try to cook that again, you kind of got it, right? And then the more after that, you got it better, because you know exactly now you don't even have to look at a recipe. You know how to throw it together. So the first ones would be to me, the bad batches of things to happen. And that would mean there was also unintelligent ones that would also be, because why would the first ones that they come out with be like, oh, these ones are perfect. Like they got it right the first time, but then the next times they didn't, you know what I mean? That's where I kind of see it. And what I see it as is that they're trial and error. I think that they focus on, so this is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that I think they focus on certain Nephilim that were dominant, that may have been, maybe they were the sizes you're talking about, or they also were more intelligent, but there was also a lot of dummies, right? There's also a lot of ones that were not as equipped. So I think that they focus on a smaller number, like they do in most things in history, like that doesn't mean that they didn't exist. Let's go back. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying I think that they focus on like all these Nephilim were all powerful and all, like almighty. I think there was some dangerous ones, and just like humans, right? There's some smarter, some that move faster. I think it was similar in that range, that not all of them. And there was dummy ones, ones that would be easy to take down. To me, that would be like how I would see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to the possibility. I mean, I just don't know when you're mixing the divine spark, the gene of Isis, with something initially, if that's going to happen or not. The reason why I say, like, as it goes down, it gets muddied, because the first original ones, you're talking about half and half. After that, you're not talking about half and half anymore. You're talking about lesser and lesser and lesser percentages as you go down. That's why they get smaller. That's why I think, like, the 13 bloodlines, they have this spark of the divine. That's why they think they're better than us. But they don't really look like it, outside of maybe like Jacob Rothschild. He's kind of tall and he's got a big old head, man. It made me think the other day when I looked at him, I was like, God, man, he's kind of towering over people. Like, maybe he does have a little bit of that in him that's obvious. You know what I mean?
But that's what I'm confused on. That's what I'm confused on the bloodline thing, right? Like we were saying, that's why I said it's different if like they're growing and kind of experimenting on it, or if they're actually having the women birth them. That's why, like, I think that's what the part that kind of that's a good picture.
I'm saying birth, but I'm saying they're removing them, either removing them or they're killing the women through childbirth. Regardless, either way, like that original bunch right there for sure. I think they need that actual interaction.
So, like, how big do you think a baby was? Like a baby Nephilim that turned out to be 40 feet. Like when he was born, how big would that baby be?
I mean, that's just a question. Who knows, right? We don't know. So if they remove them before, and they put them and they have them in some sort of gestating tank or whatever they use. I mean, at that point, obviously the tank would have to be super big.
I'm just saying. I guess I'm
not disagreeing with you. Like,
no, I know. I'm just spitballing because I'm thinking of the idea. Because I was thinking,
also,
like,
Sean, because
why wouldn't they just take the egg from the woman, right? Why would they even have to, like, they should know, like, what they have to do.
I do think some of that's going on
now
for sure. I think they've definitely, and that goes to your tinkering. I think they've tinkered through time. I think absolutely. I think maybe like the first rounds they were like, yeah, let's let them birth, and they were just killing all the women. Like, we're running out of women to have sex with and have more. You know what I mean? So maybe they.
No, but how does the blood? That's why I think like the bloodline how does it thin out? Like it would thin out.
Oh, you mean as they continually have? Well, they're mudding it because they're having sex with more humans.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
okay, that's
Nephilim start having sex with humans, or as like Gary Wayne said, like, well, how's that possible with like the males and they're so much bigger than the women? Well, he said they had like funneling systems that they would like dump semen into, or vice versa, even with the women Nephilim, which has been shown on like walls and hieroglyphs all through South America. So that would happen, and that's how it would muddy down. It wouldn't be muddying down from the angels. I think you got that angel, that divine to the woman, you're getting that 50-50. You're getting that strong elite level is what you're getting. But I think as it trickles down, because these Nephilim were considered gods too, it's not like you're having sex with a god. You know what I mean? Because they kind of were, at least.
And the angels had to kind of stop that, right? Then, like with the flood and everything like that, that kind of like stopped them being able to intermingle with humans.
Well, they got in trouble.
Right? That's why they weren't able
in the pit.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why they're not able to continuously do that part. And then that's how the bloodline ends up over time getting muddied.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
See, I know some of the guys that are big on Nephilim think that after the flood there was another incursion, right? They think that there was other fallen angels that came and had sex with more women, and then it started it back over again. I don't know if I buy into that because of what you said. I think they either went underground, which there's been a lot of lore about giants coming in and out of the earth. So I think they either went underground by portals, or they went to another dimension until after the flood, and that's how they reemerged. And then obviously as it trickles down through time, you just don't have it anymore. It just goes away unless they're mating with each other. You know what I mean?
Definitely, I agree.
And real quick, if you want to follow mainstream history, and if you believe in dinosaurs, because I know some people don't, they went from big to small. You had, and not just dinosaurs, right? Dinosaurs apart. We had dragonflies and other different things that were a lot bigger back then. And it goes back to what I think Joel said, where it was different. I think it was quite literally a different realm. It wasn't the world. Maybe perhaps it was like an elevated dimension. We don't know exactly what they're talking about in these ancient scriptures, so they could have been talking about another place. I mean, essentially, right? Or another place overlaid over ours. Who knows? But we've always been, because I always loved dinosaurs growing up as a kid, and I remember reading it. But it was like, yeah, they came down and they say that the closest relative of a T-Rex is a chicken. I mean, they went from really big to really small, if you believe that, because we know.
Now, you can kind of see that, though. Like, that's a good point, because you can also see that with dogs, right?
Yes.
Dogs are a good, just all the species, and they come from wolves, and then you got like a Chihuahua to a Great Dane, right? So, yeah, I guess that I was just trying to more point out, I think that, like that, my whole thing of pushing that was, I just don't think that all the Nephilim were like these like great warriors. I think there's some really good ones, like, you know, probably a lot. Like, and I don't mean like 5. I mean, like, there's probably like thousands. Like, but I'm saying that there's also usually a counter, you know, side. There's always a drunk uncle, bro. There's gotta be the drunk uncle.
Listen, and I'm gonna say something that's very controversial, especially in like the quote unquote Christian world. I think there could have been some Nephilim and giants that flip sides. And I think that the Book of Giants actually plays into that. And I'm going to pull this up real quick.
Like formed an alliance or something, or like, hey,
I think it could have happened, though, because it's just something that I really started banging around like the past 6 months about giants. And if, I believe, in Christ, and I believe in God, and I believe in redemption, right? So God has always been very open to giving anyone redemption. It was never like a off the table thing for anybody. And I think that, how many shots is he given, Lucifer? Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, when you think about it, and we don't even know how many times before, pre-Adamic times, when you had like the angel civilizations on Earth. And I think that's when you probably had like your, all of your other realms that we talk about, maybe what you were just talking about too, Juan. But yeah, so it's really one of the last pieces. And if anybody knows anything about the Book of Giants, it's just a bunch of pieces. It's not really, it's fragments, because it was the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they found a bunch of fragments, and they had to try to put them together. So there's actually words missing in these paragraphs when you're trying to read them. So, but it's one of the last fragments. And this is after, so I can break down the story a little bit. So Mawe was, he was a giant. He was considered a titan, and he was the son of Barakal. And he gets this vision where he sees a tablet immersed in water, and all but 3 names are left after it's like basically buried in this water. And he doesn't know what's going on, but he knows there's a flood coming. And he understands that the names represent Noah and his family. So he starts going to Gilgamesh. He goes to Ohe, who are other giants, and they start talking. Well, they start having the same type of visions. And so this is kind of how integral like Enoch was back then, like how, they knew he walked with God. So even the giants were like, hey, we got to reach out to Enoch, holla at him, see what's going on, man. So maybe he can help us decipher this a little bit. So they go to him because they don't want to die. They know they're about to die. So Enoch basically gives them a tablet that breaks down what is going to happen to them because of all their sins, because of all the awful things that they've done to people on the earth, their fathers, like Shemhazah, who's one of the fallen angels too. He actually literally talks about him in that piece of the tablet. He also talks about Raphael coming before the destruction. But he actually says, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, he says, but now loosen your bonds that's binding you to evil and pray. So he actually tells them that they can pray for redemption if they want.
And that's a mistranslation, Joel, because instead of bonds, it's supposed to be loosen your cheeks.
I thought I said buns at first. I thought he said loosen your buns. I was thinking the same thing. loosen your buns. I was like, damn, man.
Yo.
That shit
back to
goes
the
way
script,
back.
butt cheeks tight,
It's
right?
biblical.
It's biblical,
Sorry, bro.
baby. He
I
told him to
had
No,
to.
I was
them
about to
back
say the
then.
same thing. I heard
Yo.
loosen your buns, bro. Loosen your buns, bro.
I mean,
Bro, it
even
was
Enoch
in
was
the book
talking
of
about
Gi-
they need to loosen up them cheeks.
Exactly,
In the
Get a
book
little
of
too
Giants.
clinched.
Exactly. Damn, bro.
I agree with you though, Joe, because if they're a human hybrid, that means they also have empathy too, right? So they can feel like, hey man, I'm doing the wrong thing. Just like some can take it and the power is like great to them, like, oh, I love this power and I want to rule the whole world. So definitely I could see that.
Mhm.
If there's gonna be an evil one, there's gonna be a good one too. That's going to like kind of realize, hey, that's not the right thing to do. They might connect better with humans, and hey man, they might have been the root off of the Nephilim. You know what I mean? Like, they
Yeah.
got kicked out. You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
But yeah, that was one really cool thought that came to me several months ago, and I've really just been knocking that around. Like, were there giants that took the deal that were like, man, I don't need parts of this anymore, like, or ones that were born into it that didn't want any parts of it to start with? We're like, man, this is fucked up. Like,
Mhm.
One Nephilim boy looking for his father. They'd be like, hey man, you could do a whole movie on that, man.
hey, man.
The last Nephilim.
But I know, Juan, you want to talk a little bit about mainstream and maybe knock around a little like pop culture, kind of how they've really made it kind of a cool thing here in the past, 20 years, really. Like, even in the 90s, there were some games that came out with Nephilim. You had like, the card game, Magic the Gathering.
Well,
as
Devil May
Nephilim.
Cry. I mean,
That's a big one right there with Dante and Virgil.
yeah, dude.
Yeah, man. Another one too that people don't think about that talk about Nephilim. It's one of my favorite video game series of all time, and I don't game near as much as I used to back in the day. But there's one series, if it comes out, I'm gonna play it. Is the Assassin's Creed series, because I love all of the hidden, intricate stuff that's put in there, like even all the Freemasonic stuff that's put in those games. They're really interesting, but in those games, they talk about the ones who came before. And they talk about the Apple of Eden that they create. And it's all technology based. And I think I enjoy the way that they put that in context, because they show these ones that came before as bigger than the normal sized person. So they are considered Nephilim. And I think is that board game that you got pulled up right there? Role-playing game. Yeah, there's that Nephilim role-playing game.
Occult role-playing. And check this out, because I always tell people, the people who are making these games, they read what you're like, what you've been reading. They look into all these things. So it says here, Nephilim is a role-playing game about powerful elemental entities reincarnating into human beings. The players take the roles of these beings as they adapt to their newly symbiotic existence and learn the secret hidden behind veils of obscurity and mysticism, seeking the path toward enlightenment. Agartha, the game contains much symbolism, primarily related to the Hermetic tradition. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get my hands on a copy of this. So this sounds pretty dope. So
yeah, I actually had seen that when I was digging around and just looking into what Nephilim had been in pop culture. Nephilim was also in the X-Files show. It was the show
yeah, I
called
saw that.
All Souls. Yeah, it was. I remember that episode because I used to watch the X-Files a ton when I was growing up. And what was really weird about it, though, and maybe this like lends into Sean's, like they're not all like super strong. They're kind of like messed up too. But literally in that show, it was like the Nephilim were 4 disabled children that the devil was trying to pursue to kill because they were fathered by a seraph or a seraphim, but they apparently had like some sort of like power that they had to unlock, but their bodies were super feeble. So yeah, I remember that show because like the devil's just like snatching up the kids, and it got onto the last one, and like Scully and Mulder were like, we gotta save him, we gotta get the kid.
And there's a lot of bands, like AFI has a song called The Nephilim. Flatbush Zombies have a song called Nephilim. You know what I mean? They are around, but I think like a lot of times it's the lure of giants. like we talked about with Gary Wayne, and I did agree a lot to that. And you kind of alluded to it earlier with like the gnome bloodlines, the fairy bloodlines, the Nephilim bloodline. Like I think there's more to it than just the giants. I think that's what we translated to, because that means giant to everybody. But I think there's more to it. And when we see like Lord of the Rings, when we see these television series that have gnomes and fairies and elves and things of that nature, I think that they're kind of pushing that fantastic point of view, so that maybe we kind of like lose our tracks of like what the history was. It blurs the lines.
Well, Sean, let me give you this too, because you're talking about what Nephilim means, and I'm breaking in this little portion right here. It actually plays more into what you're thinking, because Nephal in Hebrew means fallen or to fall. The ayam makes it plural, so really, like, the word Nephilim doesn't mean giants. It actually means of the fallen. So that's really what it means. So that could encompass a lot more than just giants, right? I think that a better word, and again, this is semantics, because there are some scholars that like to use Raphaim as what the giants were that mean giants, because the word Rapha outside and we'll play, it does mean giants. So with the ayim, it means like a plural giant. So that's Raphaim. Now the word Rapha in Hebrew also, and this plays into what we've talked about before, Juan, ghosts of the dead, shades, or spirits. So that also plays into them dying and their spirits roaming the earth looking for host bodies as well.
Well, here's the thing. So in Genesis 6, you said that they enter the bodies of the daughters of men, right? Is that what they call them? Well, yes. What if that was possession and not literal insertion in a sexual way, and more of like an occult, paranormal way, that they were being possessed by these entities? And then we have, again, Rosemary's Baby. We have Mary, who gave birth to a baby through divine intervention, quite literally. And I mean, we've seen this over and over again, to where there's like what was the other guy that supposedly was a immaculate conception as well? There was a few other people, I mean, who were, but that's the one thing that I'm like, were they actual physical beings, or were they actually more of like a virus? I mean, a mind virus of some sort, because part of the lure as well that Lumpkin gets into, because he wrote the book The Origins of Evil, the lore that he gets into is that once the flood happened, everything was right. God killed off everything in Noah's Ark, the story. Well, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So all those bodies of those Nephilim or whatever else was there, the Elohim and the chimeras and everything else, that energy went somewhere. And that's where we get our demons today. Absolutely. Our demonic entities, because they're roaming. And not only that, but they're pissed, right? So again, there's this fight between light and dark, to where these entities got wiped out. They know they got wiped out. They're like, yo, we're mad AF. So we're just going to, wreak havoc. We're just going to do the most stuff that we can do from this realm, whatever it is. And how you're saying right there, that's a hint at that it could possibly be a supernatural aspect of it. But again, there's so many different factors at play. Not only the times that they were living in could have been quite literally a different realm. The Garden of Eden could have been a different dimension for all we know, right? So I mean, there's so many things at work that it's like, okay.
And as you said, that Nephilim means to come from the fallen. That doesn't mean that like all the giants, like Nephilim could have just been people the same size as us. Like I was saying, some of the people, like 6 foot, 6'2". But then there could also be creations that they made of the 40-foot ones. You know what I mean? Like you could like you said, experimenting. You get a gorilla, a human, a fallen. You know what I mean? So I think it is important that people know that, because I think you see it on Google and all that. When you see the translation of Nephilim, they say, "Oh, it pretty much means giants." They don't say that it does mean that. They're kind of pretty much. Yeah, stop looking at it.
Right. and me personally, I just love the word Nephilim. So like for me,
it's a cool word.
I love it. And to me, I use it for giants before the flood, like like kind of the first generation, these guys before the flood.
And
When I get
before the
after
flood, like you said, that's a whole nother world too. Like I have to remember. Sometimes it's hard when we're talking about a lot of it because you do have to separate the two. Like you guys said, the two worlds were completely different.
Right. And I tend to use the word Raphaim after the flood because that's when you're going to get more of those Goliath-sized giants. You're going to see a lot of those. And we can get a little bit of that today too, because we could talk about some of these giants in Scripture because people get really hung up on those two verses that use the word Nephilim. But there's other verses, like even in Genesis 14:5, when they talk about King Chedorlaomer and the other kings, and they went and smote the Raphaims in Ashtaroth and the Zuzims, which were also a group of giants, and you had the Emines, which were also as well. And the Ashtaroth Karnaim, which was a location where these Raphaims were at, and it was close to this place called Idri, and that's going to be important for here in a minute, but this was one of the cities of Og. And if you know anything about Og, the Bible talks about his bed and how it was like, I think it was 16 feet long. I've got it written here, and it's like 6 feet wide or 13 feet long, and 9 cubits. So yeah, that'd be like 13 feet long. And it said 4 cubits, the breadth of it, cubit of a man. So you're looking at 6 feet wide as well. So he's a big dude. And they said he's beautiful. That was the other thing they talked about. He was a handsome dude, big, fast, 2-to-1. He was super, super arrogant. And they talk about, even scholars talk about how he lost the battle because it didn't even make any sense why he would go out, because the city of Idri was built into a hillside. It actually went 70 cubits underground. So it was like a fortified city. So when the Israelites came, all they had to do was wait them out. But Og was so arrogant that he came down from his city and met them in battle and ended up losing. So again, that plays into what you're talking about, Sean, about how humans seem to kind of get the upper hand of these giants anytime that they see that they want to do something, because a lot of times because of their arrogance, because they think that they're better, they think that they're smarter, and sometimes they just outsmart themselves.
And real quick, I got a copy of this game. So start out with this game.
Oh, you got it right now?
Yeah, I got it. And they quote Rumi, which is another guy that, and it's got all these sigils on it, and it's got like some weird origin. So apparently they consulted some weird library of some guy, and they were able to do it. But look at all this stuff. I mean, again, this goes back to what I was talking about. These people read whatever that we're talking about, and it's got Ka, it's got the Ka elements, metamorphosis, Jinn, Phoenix, Angel. It's got everything, and I mean, it's an occult role playing, so it would make sense. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I can't wait to play, man.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy of it, but it's pretty interesting.
Would you say you can't wait to play?
Yeah, I can't wait to play.
You start playing that, man, you're gonna start conjuring those devils.
So I could kill them. That's what I'm gonna do. I'll be like, yeah, see,
he's like,
you heard me talking.
He's
hey, I'm not just talking. I'm talking. I was like, man, I'm not just talking, man. I'm trying to see those, man.
I mean, it's no different than playing Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I've played Dungeons and Dragons. It's the same thing. So,
facts.
But yeah, I mean, it's all up for interpretation, essentially, at the end of the day, right? Where these things, but I like that aspect of perhaps it is maybe some sort of virus. I mean, that is manipulating reality and right.
I
like
think the pushback from some people would say that there's a verse in the Bible that talks about how that the daughters of men thought they were beautiful. But I would even counter that to what you said and say that, well, they could conjure whatever they wanted if they're manipulating their minds in front of them, so that it wouldn't necessarily have to be there physically either. So,
and not only that, though, not only that, Joel, but you got to understand that let's the King James version, right? Let's talk about King James. And the reason I bring up King James is because this is a guy who was into the occult. right? He was around the likes of John Dee. Now, the way it goes is that he was terrified of the occult, but yet he was writing about demonology. He was writing about vampires. He was writing about werewolves. He was writing books. You could look it up. King James's 3 books on demonologia or something like that. And the fact that, let's say, following certain, let's branch out a little bit, following certain lore, that Francis Bacon was perhaps one of the editors of the Bible and all the final King James Version. These verses, we're taking them for face value. Right? We're taking them for face value. And obviously, you guys know I'm into alchemy. What if it's occulted behind symbolism? What if these things that are being referenced are actually other things or ingredients of some sort? And we don't know because we don't have the keys to interpret these things. So we're talking about the daughters of men, right? And they were beautiful. Well, that may mean something completely different than what me and you understand it as, because we didn't, right? This occulted scaffolding of when things go. That's what people need to understand, that there is this occulted world, not occulted like magic and all this. No, occulted as you can't see it in front of you. There's an occulted world, and there are occulted intentions when people make these things, when people are writing, especially writing and solidifying something. I mean, that goes, right, the Declaration of Independence and all these things, that the Constitution, all these things that were written down. Who knows if they were mixing things into the ink to solidify that even further. And again, when we're living in the egregore of the founding fathers, essentially. I mean, this is what this is. And if you, again, I'm kind of going all over the place, but you're getting my idea, to where they solidify this magically in some sort of occult way by writing about it and by putting it down in these books. And I labeled them, bro, interdimensional literature, because this literature changes people's lives. You know what I'm saying? Like, people live, they die by the ancient scripture. I mean, there's certain religions where people, right, they blow themselves up. You know what I'm saying? Like, they quite literally die because they're reading this ancient scripture. So it's changing their biology and the way they think. So, again, we're taking it for face value that they were actually women and that they were actually beautiful and that these things were inserting themselves into them. How? I mean, that's up for interpretation, right? But you got to keep that in mind, right? I always keep that in the back of my mind, like, but what if it's an alchemical text? What if it's meant to be read differently? Because there are 7 ways of interpreting ancient scripture. Historical is just one of them, and that's the bottom of the totem pole, right? You have the spiritual, and I've always said this, and there's different. And the reason I'm saying this is because I did the Occult Anatomy of Man, where they break down the stories of the Bible and Jesus and everything as an anatomical text, right? They're referring to this and that, but even that's up for interpretation, right?
I guess it's just your belief system too, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I think that God's big enough, especially if there's a text being put together about him, he'd have his hands all over it, regardless of who was trying to manipulate it, regardless. So that's just my personal belief system, and everybody's entitled to their own. You know what I mean? Like I totally, everything you're saying right now makes sense. Now, I will agree with you in the fact that I think the Bible is very esoteric, and there are a lot of hidden meanings throughout the Bible that God meant for us to be able to interpret that a lot of us can't interpret. But I also, one of the things I like to do too is go back to the original Hebrew of a lot of these words too, because that tends to open up a lot of text in a different manner as well. If you can at least get some sort of, translation there, because and I'm going to talk about it here in a minute about Goliath's brothers, but there's a word there that when they translated it over from Latin into English, it took out the meaning of it being a piece of technology that David didn't understand when you ran up on the giant, and they just like translated it.
That's what turns me off though from all this, Joel, because obviously I grew up in the Christian faith,
right?
And when you start to understand, like, wait, they translated a couple times, right? And then you have the Old English and you have all these different things. Well, it's like there's a lot of things that get mistranslated. And not only that, but let's step it further from my occult research and understanding that not only is it when you read something in your head, right? You're reading something in your head. Well, there's also the practice of reading things out loud. And they resonate differently when you read them out loud and said certain ways that resonate and again unlock these other deeper meanings within it. So we have this watered down vanilla version of the Bible of some guys back then that quite literally just wanted to have their own posse and their own crew. I mean, that's what happened with King James, right? They didn't want to null his marriage, so he broke off and was like, hey, there's the Geneva Bible, I want to make my own, right? So it's like you had this egotism in it as well, which turns me off even more because we know men are imperfect. But then you have the translation aspect of it to where it's like, oh, it's been translated in just water. So who knows what we're missing in what you're saying right there. I mean, there's a definition. One word can change the entire context. And I know Spanish. There's a lot of words, right? When I'm translating something from English, sometimes it's hard because they go, wait, so that word needs to go way at the front versus now it's at the back in English, right? Just an example. But words get flip-flop all over the place. And dude, I've seen it over and over again when it comes, right? The homunculus, the Liber Vitae. One of the researchers that was translating the manuscript, the Latin manuscript that came from an Arabic translation, he was religious. And some aspects of the manuscript he refused to translate because they went against his religion. And when he was, I forgot what he was, but again, it went against his beliefs. So he's like, you know what? I'm not going to talk about those obscurities. So think about that and multiply that since the beginning of, however, right? Whatever theologian or whoever.
I agree. That's like, imagine today's age, right? Like, imagine 50 years from now, and the Bible is rewritten by King Trans. You know what I mean? The King Trans rewrites it, and they go and they start putting everything's trans. You know what I mean?
Elohim were non-binary,
Yeah,
Sean.
you know what I
okay, they were non-binary.
They had both genitals. Okay?
Elohima. Okay.
The way the Nephilim sprung up because they had both, and they just impregnated themselves.
Yeah,
okay.
Bro. So I'm just putting, and I put that out there because again, not to bash on like religious scripture, because I've seen it, bro. Like literally the other day, I'm working on a huge project right now, and we're quite literally translating Arabic and Latin and German manuscripts, and we came across, right? We're doing research, and we came across in these manuscripts that are in these museums that are being defaced now. Who defaced them? Was it before it got to the museum or people in the museum that were defacing them? So again, this is a real thing to where I think that, and that's not even religious scripture. That's like magical scripture of like grimoires and all these different things. And that's the occult. But to the fact that they even withhold things from that, I mean, the possibilities after that are endless. And when you're talking about exerting your power over somebody else by their beliefs, because let's face it, I mean, religion is also a form of exerting your power over your people. So in a way of keeping, again, this is not a bad thing, but I'm just putting this out there that it can be corrupted. And that's just something that people need to keep an open mind about when you're researching these topics, because it's a possibility. I mean, we can't just think like, oh, it's never going to happen. It happens, and it has happened. And I've seen it firsthand, not just with the religious scripture, with other miscellaneous scriptures that really, I mean, don't really have not much skin in the game, but that they're still defacing them and omitting things from them. So I just find that super interesting.
No, and listen, I'm open to everything. You know what I mean? Like, I listen to everybody's side of it. Again, just from my point of view, I think that if I believe in a God that can orchestrate things in a way that he would want us to understand what he's telling us, then regardless of what man's trying to do, he's bigger than that. And that's just what I choose to believe. And I think that the text, when I read it, outside of the fun stuff like Nephilim and all the historical stuff, really, man, I read that text to see how I can communicate with my fellow man and connect with them and love your neighbor and live Christ-like. Because to me, even Christian's not really a word. Christ never said that. You know what I mean? I don't even really like using that word when I define myself. I just want to live Christ-like. And I think really, even if you don't believe in the Bible, we should all strive to live that way, because that is a person, or if you think it's a myth, a person who lived a life that was full of love and forgiveness. And I think we should all do that.
No, I agree. Like, I'm with Juan. That's how I'm a big pushback on the Bible as that part. But I've always told people like, uh, Buddha, whether Buddha and Jesus, if you like lure or real people, I believe they're real people. But I'm saying you could believe either or. To follow the simple things that they said to treat others good is like that's not a bad thing to follow. My problem is the same thing is like I think we're led into these directions, like even how not only how they read it, most Christian, Muslim, the major face, the what are they called, the Abraham face, they all have like somebody dictating and pretty much reading it to us and interpreting for us. Like now, yes, we can go ourselves, but I think it's even there's a lot of pushback. That's why like a lot of things that when you say spiritual, you're automatically taken as like, oh, you're some like yogi guru, you're on this like whole spiritual journey. And when I say, because I tell people all the time, like I believe in Jesus, I believe in God, I just don't really mess with the Bible too much, and I don't really mess with the religion. I'm not saying the Bible is bad or anything. I just finding my own journey, and they're like, oh, you're into that spiritual stuff, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's all spiritual. Like, you know what I mean? Like
I know. So
it gets
ridiculous.
muddy. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. And that's why it's okay. Like nobody has to believe the same thing. It just has to be in this where we could all discuss it like what we're doing. Like I think most of the time when you get other people with either a different faith or non-religious, they're so it's just the same thing like what you see in politics. Everybody sticks their, like heels in the ground and they're like, oh, I'm not budging. I'm not even going to give any movement. And I think there's a lot. And I'm with you. Yeah, would God like bless it? But at the same time, he also gives us free will because he doesn't stop the murders or the floods or you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of free will in there too. So that's why it kind of gets wishy-washy, but anything's possible. I just think too that I think that in my belief, that there is original text of the Bible that came, from God to the hand to the book. Boom. But I think over time, and that's why I love the book of Eli, because the book of Eli kind of defines that, like where they're like, hey, we know this book can control everybody. I could tell people like, hey man, if you don't go get more water for your kid, or if you don't go to work tomorrow, you're going to hell. The devil's going to get you. And it was this fear that pushed people around and kind of formulated them into society, because Christians, Catholics, the Jesuits, Muslim, like all these big religious fanatics, they were also ruled with an iron fist for centuries. You know what I mean? So I think that has to be taken into account too, because not that they're not even trying to be intentional evil. Sometimes people think that they're doing what's best for humanity, right? They're like, hey, this is what you need to know. And that's why we have to dig through everything. That's why everything we see is like not what we see, right? Because we have to dig for it. When you say Nephilim, that's why I lean like I don't know if they're 40 feet or 10 feet, but I know that they existed because we do have evidence. You know what I mean? We do have physical, so we don't have to just base on just text. I'm not saying you can't base it off of that, but there is physical evidence too that really can't deny a elongated skull. You know what I mean? You could try to say like people would say people are stretching their skulls, but to certain extents, it seems a little. The ones that we've seen, at least Joel, like you showed me, and other people, the how long they are, I don't believe, in my opinion, that you could stretch it out like that. I think that you either have that, like you're born that way, or you're not.
That's what she said. No, I agree with you, bro. And I'm just putting that out there because, right, I talk about my personal beliefs, but also I have hours and hours of me of talking about heretical and even blasphemous topics to where people probably, when they're listening to that one episode, and they probably think that I don't believe in whatever else, right? I truly believe, but I'm a researcher, right? I'm doing this research and I keep an open mind, but I also have my core beliefs that's what I believe in, regardless of what I read or what I talk about, right? So I'm just putting that out there to let people know, right, behind the scenes of what goes on, even with stuff that doesn't even have to do with the Bible, that how it's manipulated and how it has been manipulated. So
no, and listen, and I hate labels, but I think I fall into more of this like universalism like category where I don't know if necessarily everybody goes to hell. Like it's because even the text, when you're reading them, they don't even really read out that way either, because there's a verse where it says that Christ came to save us all, and I don't think God loses. So I believe there's a hell. I don't know if that's some sort of everlasting flame or even how that works. I don't even want to know how it works. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing you got to start thinking about, and it's just the basic level. You got some tribe out in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have access to the Bible or whatever. Are they going to hell? You got somebody that grew up as a Muslim their whole lives, and they hadn't have access to anything else. Are they going to hell? But they took care of their neighbor. They did all the things that the tenant said. I don't think that plays into that. And again, that's super heretical on my side of the table, because a lot of Christians would, want to burn me at the stake for saying that.
I was saying, take off your head right there.
But I don't really care, because at the end of the day, I'm here to find the truth. And number two, it doesn't really matter, because to me, now the one thing I do hold like super, super hardcore to me, and this is why I believe in the Bible, is the divinity of Christ. I think he was the Son of God. So that I don't waver on. I won't waver on. I'm never going to back down on that. That's what I believe. So that's one of the ones I hardline with. But everything else, I don't understand completely. So I'm not going to project on someone else something I don't fully understand, and never will, because, man, we have no idea who God is. Like, we just hope that we can connect with him and learn more every day and connect to our fellow man. And I think that's what we should all strive for.
I agree. That was beautiful. You wanted to bring something up too, right? Some visuals.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about some of the skeletons found. We're going to get into a little bit of that real quick, as we tail out. I'm
going to just name off a few. Right, pop culture. We had also the Darksiders, the video game, because I know we started talking about that. The X-Files, the show Supernatural, which I could never really get into, but the show Supernatural.
I didn't either, man. I know a lot of people that like that show too. I just wasn't. I don't know, man. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I'm not huge into vampire shit, man. I'm just really not. If it's okay, so
what if
Nick Cage is a vampire though?
Now I'm gonna go see that. I want to see that was it Renfield? I want to see that. But Interview with the Vampire was super dope. I thought that was awesomely well done, man. Just a great story. But it's more about the story to me. I don't care about sucking blood or whatever, man. We got politicians that do that every day. So
they suck more than blood, bro.
Hey!
What's up?
Yeah, but plus there's so many vampire stories, man. It's man. Twilight killed it, bro. I haven't even ever seen Twilight, but just seeing the 2-minute trailer at the movie theater at one point, I was like,
man,
I hated vampires. I was
time, man, that was all about about it, man. And it's
did she rub your head, bro? And was like, Joel, you're my little vampire, right? She'd smack your.
No, she was all about the werewolf side of it.
Oh,
so she was in there. So I had a beard and stuff. It's all good.
It worked out.
So
the original
also,
dog man.
This is weird, but in the heist-themed first-person shooter Payday 2, there's a few references to the Nephilim,
and there's a secret ending.
Yeah, with the alien technology supposedly left by a Nephilim. And then Diablo 3, which I've played before, which is the computer game. Well, I mean, it's on other platforms now, but Diablo 3 also has the Nephilim, which is the first humans upon the sanctuary, created as a result of the union between angels and demons. So they put their little twist on it. It's no, it's not just the angels. No, they're demons and the angels. So very, very. Again, these people they're reading this. They understand the material.
Yes.
So they put it in their work again because they know it has some sort of magical properties to them, in my opinion. So.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's magical, bro. You wouldn't understand. All right,
man.
So what was it that you said that you're going to talk about the evidence, right? Because we've talked about all this metaphysical mumbo jumbo. We can feel it in our bones, in our media, stomachs, right?
In the media,
I want to see one, Joel. Where can I go to see one in real life?
A lot of these ones that I'm going to bring up, I'll have people, you can go look it up. There are several books by Eliam Arzuli as well, where he's actually got all the pictures in the books of a lot of the giants that were found in the late 1800s, the early 1900s. Hell, you can even go on the Potemkin village of Google, and you can actually find some of these pictures that were taken from the newspapers of these giants that were in the 7-foot to 10-foot range, like Sean's talking about, and people's bodies sitting next to them, full-on skeletons, right? And I'm just going to talk about a few of them and a few incidences throughout history. And I got one little video I want to show, and you guys may have seen it already, but maybe for the people that haven't seen it, it's very interesting, of a Nephilim that could be around right now. In 1833, there were soldiers digging at Lompoc Rancho in California, and they discovered a male skeleton that was 12 feet tall. It had stone axes, carved shells, and other artifacts with it. It had the double row of upper and lower teeth, and it was secretly buried because the local Native Americans became upset about the remains. So a lot of these that you find in North America, yeah, I've seen that picture before, by the way, too, which is interesting because it's kind of in a fetal position, but if you stretched it out, that would have to be in the 10-foot.
Is this the same place, Santa Catalina Island?
No, but I was going to get to the Santa Catalina Island one.
I googled
that's all good though, because you can pull that up. I don't even know if I put that in my notes, but I do know about the Catalina Islands. That's really wild too, man. They found a bunch of skeletons in Catalina Islands, though, man. It was like I don't even remember the number that they found. I don't think it wasn't just the one; it was several that they found in the Catalina Islands.
There you
go. Yeah, Lompoc.
Is this? Okay, yeah. Here's the fine.
Yeah, that should be the actual little piece that they wrote on it.
Santa Monica.
What? Is that University of California, Riverside?
So
so Lompoc. This is in the same area, though. Yeah, that's it.
So, what is believed to be the burial ground of the giant race which inhabited these shores before the discovery of California by Cabrillo was found last week by campers on the beach of Malibu Ranch, where they camped. The party observed a skull protruding out of the ocean's shelving bank of sand and gravel. Digging a few minutes, they unearthed 14 more skulls and a number of complete skeletons, all more than 7 and several over 8 feet long. A large collection of heavy stone mortars, whatever that says there, pestles, utensils of various kinds, and arrow. So 7 to 8 feet. That's pretty big. I mean, here in Florida, you have the Timucua, which were around that same range, 7 to 8 feet tall. Why does this keep going over to the side? And so yeah, was this the one that you were talking about?
No, it's not. This was in Lompoc Rancho, so it's a little different. This was 12 feet tall right here, the one that I'm talking about.
All right, let me see if I can find anything else here, actually.
Also, to get to what Sean was talking about, we were talking about the massive giants. So there were 3 full skeletons found, and this is super hard to dig up to find. It's in one of my books, but there's a story of Alexander the Great's men. They went to an island because they were doing, just scouting and all this. They went to this island and they started digging around. They did excavation and they found these skeletons that were over 30 feet tall. They found 2 together, and then they found a third one, and they excavated them out of there and gave them to Alexander the Great, and he kept them in his trophy chambers.
Look at this. The Bible mentions several cases of giants as the Raphaim, the Anakims,
yeah.
Anakims, the Emims,
yeah,
and the Zazanims, and others. So, the body of Orestes, according to the Greeks, was 11 feet. So it's talking about. It was also. Sort of says.
That's wild that they put all those names of the giants in there, because most people don't use all those names when they talk about The
Right here.
Anakims are actually they were beast mode, man. That's what Og was. They were like straight beast mode. They ruled like the lower portion of Israel, or what, wasn't Israel at the time, because they had taken it over.
Right here, January 11, 1613, some Masons digging near the ruins of a castle in Daldin, I don't know how to say that, in a field which by tradition had long been called the Giant's Field. So at 18 feet, they discovered a tomb that was 30 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 8 feet high, which was gray stone with the words, whatever that says there, cut thereon. When the tomb was opened, they found a human skeleton entire, 25 and a half feet long, 10 feet wide across the shoulders, and 5 feet deep from the breastbone to the back. This is a big boy. His teeth were also about the size of an ox's foot, and his shin bones measured 4 feet. So imagine a shin bone the size of Sean. I mean, Sean's about what, 4'2", 4'3", Sean?
It's something like that.
It's also something like that.
So again, I mean, but this is a thing. I mean, we're seeing all these different bones, right? I mean, there's another one here from 1916, but where are the pictures, baby? I want the videos. This is in Oakland, bro, of a giant Indian believed to be a prehistoric race was unearthed near a gravel pit. The bones were all part of one skeleton. Only the jawbone of the skull remained, but the arm and the leg bones, as well as some smaller bones, indicate that the man was more than 8 feet tall. So, I mean, this could have been a tall Indian, or indigenous person, but
I mean, it could have been, especially when you're talking about in that 7 foot range. I mean, we know people that are 7 foot now. So when you're talking about that, I think a lot of times though, when they attribute those 7 foot bones that they find to giants, I think they're looking at the dexterity of the bones themselves. I think they're looking at a few factors like the, double rows of teeth, maybe 6 fingers. They're looking into a few other things. So when you're actually breaking that part down, but yeah, I don't think 7 foot to me is not necessarily a giant. I mean, I guess, comparative to the normal person, but as far as maybe some other attributes that are tied into, the 7 foot giants that they find grouped together. Now, it is unusual because if they find like a grave site or a mound with 7 to 10 of them that are 7 to 8 feet tall, then you got to be like, well, this is like a tribe of big people. Then you can start talking, I guess, about giants. But if you found one without the attributes, maybe that's just a big person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And also, just to think outside the box, right, to really expound it even further, what if, right, because some people don't believe in dinosaurs, what if these bones of dinosaurs that we've been told for forever now were actually the remnants of giants? I mean, right? I mean, we know that the Smithsonian Museum is shady. We know that they're lizard people. So they could omit or occult certain things, but question from me to you, Joel, why would they hide this? Would they hide it because maybe it proves that the biblical scripture has some credibility to it and they don't want that, right?
Well, here's the thing. The biggest thing is evolution. So at the end of the day, if you have giant bones, that's going to disprove evolution. You don't want that on the format. Ever since Darwin, who was a Freemason, by the way, he came out with his whole theory of evolution, which I don't even think was his theory. I think it was just concocted.
It was Huxley that right? Huxley was also in there somewhere.
Correct.
Helping him defend it.
So I think that, he was just more the face of it, right? It's like Edison, like he didn't create anything. He was just the face of certain, discoveries, or whatever you want to call them, inventions. But again, I think it disproves that, because then you're going back, like, wait a minute. So there were giants before man. Then you got to start equating how that works, right? There's and I don't have it with me. I wish I did, but there's a story. It's not even a story. It's a fact. But there were dinosaur fossilized prints next to human prints that they found, and this has happened several times, but this was a particular valley that this was found, and the Smithsonian just basically over time, and it's funny, made the human prints look like more like dinosaur prints. They magically went from like 5 toes to like 2, 3 toes, and then it just morphed into. And a lot of people had the original pictures, and they were like, "Wait a minute, this proves that they were at least side by side, or at least there was like a pre-Adamic man, or there was some sort of humanoids that were around with dinosaurs or these giant lizards or dragons or whatever you want to call them." Right? So they've done this time and time again because they have to spew their take on things. It's like when the Smithsonian said that Native Americans were the first people in North America, and they've held true to that. Well, giants would destroy that too. That's out of the question. All of the crazy Egyptian stuff that was found in the Grand Canyon with like some completely just out there group of Egyptians. I mean, there were some Ramses like decorations there, but it wasn't of Ramses. It was a completely different sect of people that were found there. Well, the Smithsonian went in there and took all that out and hid
it's still shut down. It's still
right.
You can't go to certain areas of the Grand Canyon.
Yep.
It's too dangerous.
I got a guy, man. I got a guy that can.
You got a guy?
He's got a Smithsonian guy. Yeah. I mean, he's not really a real guy, but
he's a homunculus.
Clone. He's something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. You could call him that.
His name's Jay from Cryptids of the Corn, and he does work at the Smithsonian.
Oh, really?
Well, he does, but then he's got like multiple clones that come out and work with Justin. So like,
and I'm working one of the clones right now, and I'm gonna get back there. So we're gonna get to the bottom of this one way or the other.
Golly, bro.
Hey, guess what? This past weekend, I was hanging out with Cryptids because they did a whole presentation about floating mushrooms and everything else for like a group of people in this haunted school, by the way, which was really crazy. So I went there to meet them there. Hillbilly Horror Stories was there too, and they were doing like all full-on presentation. But I met the 0001 version of the clone, Sean. And check this out. The other versions don't clean or anything. This version of Jay cleaned everything up within like 10 minutes and had like all the chairs put up. I looked up and it was done so quickly. I was like, hey, man, this clone right here is like
so
the
they're
luxury
improving
bottle.
It at least. Yeah. That with all the bells and whistles. You guys.
I love how you guys have a conspiracy within your own clique of friends. That
I even have conspiracies about myself. You know what I mean? Like,
am I even real, guys?
Am I homunculus?
Yeah, I have people email me all the time.
Juan's inbox and being like, "Hey, man, look, dude, I had my weird bowel syndrome today. Does that make me a homunculus?"
Bro, you say that, but there's some people who really like dead serious message me trying to like, hey, I have this curse that was put on me. Do you know how to break? I'm like, no. And then I got other people like, hey, I'm a homunculus. Like, what do I do?
Dude, you should tell them crazy stuff though. Be like, hey, mix a little bit of jizz and blood.
No. I'm not gonna do
with
that.
some tapatio and get a little packet of a seasoning from. It has to be this specific.
I'm not gonna do that. But check this out. Here, I have this article pulled up, and look what I see right here. Would somebody come and look at this? Would somebody come and look at this? Look at lodge number. Next to the giant bones found article.
Actually, another thing too, if you want to tie the Freemasons into giants, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can tie into them, but there is a story about one of the fraternal lodges when they didn't find it, but one of the locals found giant bones, like a full skeleton, and they went and took it, and then they use it for some of their initiations as well. So,
well, that's one aspect of it that you have to also look at. Why would the Smithsonian hold these relics? Well, they're just that, relics that they could potentially use for magical purposes. Again, you have the skull and the skull and cross bones of You have Geronimo, right? Because they have some sort of talismanic properties to them. So that could also be, again, just looking at it from a different lens, right? Well, like, why would they do that? Well, that's also maybe potentially an option for them.
And what if these spirits of the Nephilim, hang around these bones sometimes,
Hey,
you know what I mean? And
exactly.
then by you taking those bones in, you're invoking this spirit and you're taking it on, and maybe it's giving you some other properties, or, you know, it does whatever for your group of people that you work with, whatever. So man, I'm with you on that. I think the bones could definitely be used in an alchemical sense. Absolutely.
Or even just in a belief, like you guys say too, we all talk about. I mean, don't they do like rhino horn in China, like for like it's for men fertility, or like
You would know that, right, Sean? You have some?
I mean, got a little bit. I got some of that tiger. You know what I mean? Like I was snorting the tiger blood with Charlie Sheen. You know what I mean? We were getting a little. We were out there, bro. Like, but the tiger blood is a little something different. It's a more psychedelic.
He's like, I've heard it's for men fertility. You know,
yeah, I
that
think
they
it gives you boners or something.
Yeah, something
I'm not
like
like
that.
something like that.
So, Joel, are these things around till this day? I mean, I know you said you had some evidence of some people that potentially could be.
I got one video, and it's done the rounds before, but I think it's just so interesting every time I look at it, and I'm like, man, maybe, you know, because one of the things about Nephilim that we do know is they're really adept in battle. That's one of their things, right? They're warriors. And I think, and I'm not going to go into on this podcast because people can go down the rabbit hole of portal babies and Nephilim portal babies, the whole series, which is like 4 different ones. If you want to hear what I think about Nephilim, and
if you want to get that Portal Nephilim series, act now for 3 installments of $19.95. Get yours today.
Which, like I said, I got a 4.5-hour swap cast I did with Tony Merkel and Eric from Uncomfortable and Crypts of the Corn, which, by the way, I did separate podcast on all of theirs, where we had some crazy technology issues when I started breaking down to what I think Nephilim are now and how they're going to come back in the future. So we won't get into all that today. But in saying that, though, I think that Nephilim are already working with some of our governments and in some of the special ops teams, maybe, you know, just
Underground military bases.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think so. But I've got this video, and we're going to show
Are
it.
Nephilim fake and gay? Find out on the next episode of Shadowban Syndicate.
Oh, man, that was...
Can you imagine a gay Nephilim like, hey, men of renown.
Yeah, but what if he likes you, bro? That's the worst, bro.
No,
like,
but here's the thing, though. I don't think you're that far off, though, man. You know, with that, because they did a lot of orgies and a lot of craziness. I don't think
It's all
that
right. You can say it, Joel. A lot of gay shit. It's all right.
a lot of gay shit, bro. Like I think that is absolutely on the table. You
the
guys
best
see everything?
ever. You guys just reminded me of like when my
Can
my
you
home
guys
used to have
see
these
stuff?
like. No, I don't see anything now.
There you go. Are you sharing the audio from that tab?
We don't need to see the audio. We don't really
all
need
right.
the audio, so it's just
All
we really need to look at it. So.
Make a big screen. Yeah, there you go. It's all right. Daddy's got you. So, what are we looking at? Oh, an actual
Right here,
giant
you got
Nephilim?
soldiers here. And you have
Mhm.
a soldier here.
Oh, I think I've seen this one. Yeah,
But you're gonna have this big one right here. But you're gonna see it move too. So it's actual video. They're just showing the stills. So they're saying this guy right here is like 6 foot though. So if he's 6 foot, that's what, about 10? Maybe taller.
Never seen this before.
And some people say, you know, he's standing up on something, but dude, that's like 2 inches if you're looking at like a.
And what was this? Do you know?
That's the thing. It was caught on camera in the U.S. Nobody knows exactly where it was caught. Again, it's no.
That's a great deal. $22.99 for that oil right there, bro. They're standing in front of like an AutoZone or something. That's a great deal, dude. I wonder if it comes with the oil filter.
This
Here you go.
picture
This is gonna be
believable
moving
because of
around
super
right here.
soldiers, man. There's a lot of super soldier
Yeah, but
programs
look how big
in
this.
all countries.
Look how big this thing is, bro. Like, it's crazy.
Yo, Joe, that shit looks fake as fuck.
I mean, it could be fake as hell too, man. But it was doing the rounds. But yeah, maybe it's fake. I don't know. It's crazy though. But that was one of the ones, man, that hit the rounds real hard.
Real hard, real fast.
Real hard, real fast, baby.
Just how
I'm
Sean
not saying
likes
that's
it.
definitive proof or anything, but I do like some of that stuff because you just don't know, man. In the ages like deep fake and CGI and all that, man, it could very well be fake. But then again, I think they throw so much fake stuff out there. So if the real thing comes out there,
Yeah.
and you be like, that's fake.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting enough.
And that's also the dynamic of the community too. We want proof. We want proof. Here's the proof. Right? Like the story of the guy's drowning and he's like, no, God's gonna save me.
Yeah.
God's like, bro, I sent you 2 boats and you still drown. Like
You were like, nah, bro.
sometimes you gotta take the hint, right? So absolutely, and I mean, this is one of the topics that really I started with, and I find it super interesting. I find any ancient, right? Because I've always, Manly P. Hall says that religion is like it's like a reflection of, he has a wording, but like the consciousness of humanity, if you will, right? Like this, where it's like showing with all these symbols, right? Archetypes, if you want to go down that realm, but just really the stories of creation really fascinate me. So the Nephilim, giants, anything like that really fascinates me, and alchemy. So of course, when I first came across this, I found it super interesting. And when I was asking the people in the church questions about it, they're only going to give you the vanilla we keep idea description of it. And when you want to ask more, like my first Bible, and I keep it next to my desk here, is a study Bible. And it's outdated now, but it would give you the verse, and then it would give you at the bottom like a breakdown of what it could mean. But again, that can only go so far.
So far, yeah, no, I totally agree with you, man.
Maybe we could have like a little like motto or something. Be like, man, if you're tired of that vanilla bullshit, come to Shadowban Syndicate and get that raw dog facts. You know what I mean? Raw dog and facts, baby.
And Joel, do you have any reading material for people who want to learn more about this subject than obviously the mainstream? Is there any books that you would recommend to them?
Yeah, for sure, man. I'd go down the L.A. Marzulli rabbit hole. He's got a ton of stuff, man. I couldn't even give you one book in particular. I've got several. So I would just go to, I think, LAMarzulli.com. I think you can get it directly from me. You go to Amazon. He's got some really good stuff. Gary Wayne is also absolutely phenomenal. He's got the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. Plus, he just came out with a follow-up to the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, which was like a long time coming. So I don't have that one yet, but I'm going to get that. Another great author who I love is Steve Quayle. And a book that I've been hard on this past year is Angel Wars, and it's phenomenal. It's got a lot of stuff about old Earth in there. It's not just about Nephilim, even though that is a central piece, but it talks about Chimera. It talks about all kind of fallen angel DNA, messing around, like everything, man. I mean, he even goes deep, bro, into like dinosaurs might have been created by fallen angels in old Earth, it to be used as avatars in battle, which is next level.
That sounds pretty dope, though. Like a movie on that. Can you imagine that, bro?
Bro,
that'd be so sick. Crazy. All right, like
it is.
What?
So that's a good place to start with those 3 authors. There's a ton of them out there, but like those guys right there, man, I really go to because they've done so much research, and then they get me doing even more research where I start creating my own theories and my own ideas. Because one thing that I like to do is tie a lot of what is in the past to now into technology now. So I think it's all moving into transhumanism, and I think Nephilim will be a part of that. But
bro,
absolutely.
$220 for this book? You tripping, son?
That's how good it is, bro. Like, what are you
talking? It went out of print though in 2014, so I ended up finding a really good deal on it when I.
Oh, you got a good deal, bro.
I did.
I always say shit like that when I buy something that I know was overpriced, but I'm still gonna get it.
How much I got it for because it was going for, I think the lowest I saw on eBay was like 150, 175, but I ended up finding it for $75 from a used
What'd you do to him, bro?
Amazon.
What you did?
They had 6 copies left too, and I ended up getting.
He gave him a Rahahim.
It's like, bro, when I started talking about this book on my podcast, I got this book for $85, right? Pythagorean palaces. And when I started talking about it on different shows, it's like $450 now, I think. Because there's like none.
I got this free notebook at work.
So, yeah, because usually my people ask me like what they could read. Because, right, we're drawing inspiration from somewhere. So I like to reference my material that I'm using, my source material. So,
well, the good thing with what's his name?
L.A.
Marzulli and Gary is that you can find them on all different podcasts, and they have videos. They have really good breakdowns of stuff too. Like, and they're able to answer a lot of questions.
Steve Quayle too. He's got a lot. He's on a lot of stuff too. He's another one. So you can find those three guys talking about it. But if you can get the text, it's
I'm saying,
good
but get the
read.
text and if you could get the text and then like listen to the podcast of it, because Gary Wayne does answer a lot of questions. I thought when we had him on the podcast, it was great. He had like a lot of answers for everything. Right? We threw everything at him. Like, I didn't even know as much as you knew.
No, you didn't throw everything at him, Sean, because you didn't ask him if they were fake and gay. Because you didn't answer that.
I asked him if there was black ones. Remember? I was like, was there black Nephilim?
He literally did. And he was like, yeah, by the way, he's like down here in South America. And it was like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was ready for everything, man. Like, I was just trying to throw everything because I just have questions. But no, I think Gary Wayne is phenomenal, man. That's probably one of my favorites. I don't know that as much, but I thought it was cool that he could break it down for someone like me that had no idea of the subject, and I was able to ask questions and he was able to answer them.
Yeah, that says a lot, right? I mean, if Sean, I'm just
he got it. You know?
I just messed with you. Yeah, did you have one more thing to add? I thought you said you had one more. Was two things or no?
No, I'd already tied it up right there. So, listen, guys, I had a blast on this, and you know me, like, if we get into Nephilim, and Sean always jokes that I'm the Nephilim version of you, Juan, anytime on our show, because I can tie Nephilim into any single thing. Like, we would be sitting there talking about Kid Rock, man, and I'm like, well, let me tell you about how the Nephilim tie into Kid Rock.
Yeah, and then Juan's going to be like, yeah, remember that little midget Merv or whatever? And he's like, that's a homunculus.
Exactly, bro.
So we got to do an episode one day that's like Nephilim versus homunculus. Like, that's where we got to go with it. I'll be the referee, you know what I mean? And you guys can go out and be like, no. The reason why homunculuses are better.
Yeah, bro. It'd be like that. You guys remember that show where they would face off two animals?
Oh, yeah.
With each like a bear,
a gorilla versus
a lion or whatever it was, and they would like make the models and everything.
Yeah.
So it'd be like that. But yeah, this is fun. I mean, this, again, super interesting. I love it. And hopefully for the next one here that we're gonna do the Zeitgeist. Right?
Yeah.
I remember being in middle school or something when this came out.
Yeah, I think I was in or just ended high school, I think, whatever. Because I saw it like, this is the time when Netflix first like had their
there's
stream.
3 movies now.
Mm-hmm.
So they got the Zeitgeist, the movie, addendum, right? Because they had to fix some stuff. It didn't end in 2012. Sorry, guys, right?
Yeah, my bad.
We got the math wrong. And then moving forward, which came out in 2011. Oh, so these are still pretty old. 2011, 2008. And then, yeah. So this guy stopped making movies after he was like, bro, we did 2012. We did 2021. Yeah. Like, let's just wrap it up. We're not
supposed to be here.
Because we're not even, I don't know. I'm out of numbers,
that's
bro.
Because the calendar's wrong. You heard about those theories of the calendar's wrong and that 2012 was really 2019 and all this, like, because it's a 13-month calendar and it was changed in like.
Okay.
I'm just saying, bro. Or we could be in a Nephilim reality, bro. This could be a Nephilim.
We're in a Nephilim's ass cheeks, guys. This is a Nephilim's ass cheeks. Make sure to tune in to the next. Right? He said, lo and behold, the buns or whatever it was that Enoch said. Bro, Enoch was that dude.
Loosen the buns, baby.
Loosen the buns. All right.
He was the first one to say, loosen those butt cheeks.
That's right. Yeah. You heard it first here. Enoch, the Book of Giants. You can check it out on there and you can pull that quote. Guys, this is fun. Can't wait for the next one. Yeah, so Zeitgeist for the next one. And yeah, you guys want to plug anything? TJOJP.com. Find me on there. Love you all. Kill the
Mockingbirds Podcast on Instagram. Check out Joel Thomas, new song Eat. Check out Sean Chris, new song Own Nothing Be Happy on all music streaming platforms, and follow us on social media sites, Van Tesla Music and Sean Chris Music. Another fun episode. Love you guys, man. Let's get out of here.
Had a blast, y'all. Peace.
Nice.
It's time to eat. I don't want it discreet. What I am cooking, I keep it a vibe, even a sheet. Not here to make friends. Rent free in their heads. They don't like what I say, so they say that I work for the fans. When you're out of the box for the truth, they call you a side, cause what they assume is unpaid opposition, cause I see things like Andrew Tate as a spoon. To me, it's easy to see, like tearing down women ain't building them up. Ain't no difference with Biden and Trump. They don't be liking that shit. I don't be echoing chambers. Epstein's list didn't exist. Y'all building these houses up with no framers. Jerry, Georgia, lane with no Kramer. Ooh, watching them twitch like a gamer. Ooh, like rooters, I come with disclaimers. Ooh, you missing the context like thousands of trains be going down all of the time. Unless you are Kamala Harris, and trains be going down all of the time. When it comes to control, I buck like Call of the Wild. Fucked up pyramid ball of the eye. Yeah, it's time to eat. I don't want it discreet. What I am cooking, I keep it a vibe, even a sheet. Not here to make friends. Rent free in their heads. They don't like what I say, so they say that I work for the fans. Think I talk all this shit with no guns. It's going down, Sean got a few off the bucks. Merkel threw me the oop when he met me. I don't jump like a meat with a dump. Easy, elbow off of the top. ZZ on gates, buying up crops. CD. While blue hair teachers are teaching your kids curriculum to cut off the dicks in them. Be something ridiculous, it's meticulous. The way that they wanna take innocence. Programming is limitless. We don't even know who's indigenous. Fake abolitionists. And Abraham Lincoln was black, eh? History's been rebooted more times than Kitty Perry backstage. Looking at sedatives, calling it media. Wise like an owl, call me bohemian. Trusting the science, I ain't obedient. What you gonna do? They like where they at, yo. They don't wanna transact, no. They like where they at, yo. They don't wanna transact, no. It's time to eat.